Hello hackers, and welcome to another OSCP preparation video. In this video we're going to go through Kioptrix 2014 or Kioptrix machine number 5. So this is the last Kioptrix machine that we're going to go through. Finally, we're going to move away from Kioptrix machines and into some other vulnerable machines from vulnhub in future videos. Okay, so as you can see here, there are my notes for this machine, and if we get stuck along the way, we're going to go and look into them. All right, so a couple of points that I want to make before we get down to this machine. So out of all Kioptrix machines, this was the one that I spent the most time on. And it's not because of its level of complexity, because I could say that this was at most an intermediate or moderate level of complexity, but it is because I've actually taken sufficient time to explore whatever vector of attack came into my mind, or whatever idea came into my mind. So what I want to drive home is the fact that I spent a lot of time on enumeration, and I feel that this is going to help me a lot in future assessments, in future practices. So the key point that I want to make before we start this machine is that enumeration is really important, and you should always put it high on your priority list. Okay, so without further ado, let's get down to this machine. So I usually start with an nmap sv, but first we have to find out what is the IP of this machine. So for that I use a net discover, but first I'm going to do an if config and see what my IP is, and then a net discover -i on ETH0, so interface ETH0, and minus range 192.168.00/24, and we should see our machine pop up immediately. So it's 0104. Okay, so we're going to start a simple nmap -s version on 192.168.0.104. And if this type of nmap doesn't yield any results, I usually do a more thorough nmap scan, and I've showed you in previous videos all the arguments that I use. So make sure, if you want to know more about that, make sure to watch previous videos in this series. I'm going to pop up another terminal over here. Okay, so this was this scan finished quickly, and as we can see, we have 22 SSH closed, we have 80 open and 80 open, and we have Apache servers running on these two ports. So the first thing that we do is actually look into what's on port 80, 192.168.0.104. Okay. Enter, doesn't want to execute. So we see a default message, it works. Now we go back over here, and I usually do a derb, the very most or the very basic derb scan with all the parameters by default, with the common word list, the 4000 word list, the common.txt, so 0104, so I don't specify anything else. If this type of derb web brute force, web directory brute force doesn't yield any result, I would do a more thorough derb scan or derbuster or gobuster, depending on the context. So let's start this one, and as you can see, it uses the common.txt. And in the meantime, let's look into the page source. So as we can see, we have an HTML comment saying something about pchart 213 index.php. So let's copy this and try to navigate to that specific location. So for whatever reason, it doesn't want to take enter. Okay, so we can see that there's some sort of software running in this folder, so pchart213. When I saw this, the first thing that came to my mind, of course, was to actually Google pchart213 exploit. And as we can see, this is the URL that I visited. Of course, there's also, I think there's also a Metasploit module, but our purpose over here is not to use Metasploit, but try to do everything or almost everything manually, or work manually as much as possible. So I looked into this pchart multiple vulnerabilities, and the one that I read more details about was this directory traversal one. So this is sort of like a local file inclusion vulnerability, and as we can see, it's on examples, so it's on pchart examples index.php. This is the vulnerability that allows us to do a local file inclusion on this or exploit a local file inclusion on this server. So let me just copy that. So it's inside examples, Control V, and then enter doesn't work, of course. So as we can see, we have directory traversal displaying us @c password. Okay, so we're not actually interested. Derp didn't find anything interesting, so we're just gonna leave it aside and maybe get back to it later if we aren't able to get something fruitful from this directory traversal vulnerability. Okay, so at this point, when I saw that I was able to read files on the server, and this is a FreeBSD server. So this runs a FreeBSD 9.0. I looked for, and we also know that we have Apache running. Apache, if we look into Nmap, Nmap thinks it's Apache 2.2.21. So I Googled, at this point, I Googled for Apache configuration files for this type of operating system. And I found out that there's a lot of interesting information in user local etc Apache, and it might be httpdconf. Okay, so running that, there's nothing in there. Then I tried Apache 2 httpdconf, then Apache 21 httpdconf, then I tried Apache 22 httpdconf, and there you have it. This is the httpd configuration file for the Apache server that runs on this computer. So I took sufficient time to actually read through and see if there might be any potential misconfigurations or potential leaks of information that would help us further gain more privileges or gain a way into the server, because right now we only have some ability to read files on the server. And right towards the very bottom of the file, there have been a couple of paths that I looked into. So I took each one of these and looked into them. I looked into httpd vhostconf, so Control C. This is in extra httpd vhost, and then of course enter doesn't work, so it's extra, it's vhosts. So copy extra httpd vhosts. Okay, and the rest of the files over here. So like I said, I took sufficient time for enumerating as much as possible. And when I got to the very bottom of this, I remembered that we also have another server running on port 8080. And I tried actually going to 192.168.0.104 on 8080. And I get a forbidden on this server. So while I was reading through the httpd conf, I saw that there was this set env if user agent is Mozilla. So this got me into thinking that you'd have to come from this type of user agent, or you'd have to access port 8080 through this type of user agent if you would wanna actually be able to access it appropriately without the forbidden message. So I tried a couple of user agent switchers in Mozilla, a couple of user agent add-ons, but I wasn't able to actually get anyone like working appropriately. So I think I tried 2 or 3 of them, and then I thought, why not just like try curling with custom user agent. So that's exactly what I did. So let's first curl -v into http 192.168.0.104 on port 8080, and we see the same forbidden message. And if we try curling with a custom user agent with the one that's being specified over here, so Control-C and then Control-Shift-V, and then we're curling into, let's also put this within quotes as well, 192.168.0.104 on port 8080, -v for verbosity. And as we can see, we don't get the forbidden message, but instead we get something different, some PHP tags thing. So when I saw this PHP tags thing, I thought that this might be something custom, this might be some sort of software or module, or something that's some sort of functionality that's being used by the server. And of course, the very first thing that came to my mind was to Google for PHP text exploit. Okay, and I saw that there are two exploits, 2 remote code execution exploits, and I looked into the first one. I wasn't I don't think I was able to make it work, and then I looked into the second one, and I didn't actually like download it and exploit it, but I read through this to better understand what it does, and tried running it manually. So I got to the point where I saw that after the PHP text URL, it goes to index.php, and this is the actual vulnerability. And as you can see over here, it is URL encoded. So let's just copy this value, which is the one that's URL encoded, with Control-C, and then URL encode, try to decode it. Let's use this one and paste it. I mean, we need a decoder, not an encoder. This translates to get CMD. Okay, so let's just try to exploit this manually. So we copy the index from the index all the way down to the end, Copy, and then we go back to our curl command over here. And then we're going to go into the PHP tags folder and then paste our exploit over there. And if this works, we should have a new file within the data folder, rce.php. That's gonna be its name, with the CMD parameter that's gonna allow us remote code execution. Okay, so we've got quite some output from this one, and as I read through this exploit all the way down to the end, it says that we should be able to do command execution by visiting the data folder, like I said, the rce.php, and of course the command execution over here. So if we modify our curl command over here, so we are in PHP tags, in data, rce.php, that's where our file has been uploaded, if it was, and then command equals, let's say, present working directory. And as we can see over here, we have command execution. We can run this for better visibility. We can run this without the -v, and we can see that we have command execution because it tells us the present working directory. Let's just leave it with the -v over here. So as I kept exploring this command execution vulnerability, I finally got to the point that I understood that this also has to, so for thorough command execution, this command also has to be URL encoded. So for example, if I want to do, I tried, of course, nc-e, I tried getting a proper reverse shell by setting up a listener on my Kali, and by doing nc-e without any encoding over here, and that actually didn't work. Netcat, I wasn't able to get a shell through Netcat. So let's go to reverse shell cheat sheet from Pentest Monkey. That should probably be the first result. So the reverse shell cheat sheet from Pentest Monkey. So I tried a bunch of them over here, and none of them worked, and none of them except the Perl one, or they haven't worked for me. So I took the Perl one, then I actually had to encode it. So right now we need to go to encode and modify it before we encode it. So we have to specify my IP 192.168.0.103, I believe. So let's see, 0103, and let's set up a listener on port 441. Okay, and then over here modify the port as well. So port 441, and then actually encode this. Grab it over here, Control C. And then we're actually going to paste it over here, Control Shift V, and hit enter, and we are inside the server. Okay, so once I got inside the server, then I would go through another round of extensive enumeration. So I don't know, I think I looked into this box for at least probably more than an hour and a half until I focused on a specific exploitation path. So one of the first thing that I tried was to understand what type of shells are available on this on the server. So I looked into cat etc shells, I think. So cat not found. Okay. Let's try uni-a. we get the operating system over here. So if we look which cat, it's bin cat, and it says cat not found. So cat @c password, it reads it. So cat @c shell z, and it seems to be working. So this is weird. So we have sh, csh, and tcsh. So one of the first thing was to try getting a better shell. So I tried tcsh, and then actually tried python -c import pty.spawn bin tcsh. Okay. All right, so we are in a better shell right now. Let's see present working directory. So user local Apache, ls-a, getting out of here. So I tried looking into as many configuration files from etc and also from user local etc to better understand the configuration of the server, to see if there are some potential, or if there are more than one ways of actually getting privilege escalation of the server, because at this moment I think I am data. Okay, and if we look into cat @c password, we can see that we have OSS, ECR, ECM, EC, we have MySQL, we also have tour and root. So root has a bin CSH shell. Okay, so I tried better understand how this server is configured, and at one point I remember, so during enumeration I was also looking for SUID and GUID files without any successful or fruitful exploitation of them. So I looked -perm -u equals s for SUID files and -g equals s for GUID files. So u equals s minus type f files 2 greater than dev null. And I'm not going to run this command because it's going to take some time until it finishes. Okay, and at a later point I was also able to find out that I can connect to MySQL. I tried connecting with user root and no password, and lo and behold I get an access denied. But if I connect to user tour with no password, I'm able to get into the MySQL database. So show databases, we have the information schema, but I wasn't able to make from this vector a successful exploitation. I tried user-defined functions, but I wasn't able to get anything out of it. Okay, I also found out that I can connect to MySQL with user MySQL and password, no password, but we're not going to go into that because that also wasn't a successful vector of exploitation. So at one point I got to the very most basic of it and looked again on the type of operating system that we have. So it's FreeBSD 9.0, and the very obvious thing that I did was to look for a privilege escalation exploit for FreeBSD 9.0. So if we go back to Firefox, I don't think we need this anymore, or this, and we look for a FreeBSD 9 exploit. The first one that I actually tried was this one, as you can see. So it's sysret. Let's bin this. So before we get into that, I tried understanding how am I going to be able to move files between Kali over here, and I'm going to minimize this. So move files between Kali. Let's go into train OSCP Kioptrix. Okay, so the ways I looked into the ways that I'm going to be able to move files between Kali and Kioptrix. So on Kioptrix, I tried wget. We can see that we don't have wget, and I wasn't able to install it. I also tried curl, but curl is also not installed. So one of the most basic ways to actually do file transfer between two machines in Linux is using netcat. So I tried seeing if we have netcat, which netcat we can see is user bin netcat. So then I also, since this was one way to actually transfer files between the two systems, I also looked for ways to compile, if I am going to be able to compile the exploit on the machine itself. So I looked for GCC, and of course we can see that we have it installed, so we, in theory, we should be able to compile it. We also can see if CC is installed, but for some reason it froze. Let's give it a little bit of time to see if it recovers. If it doesn't, I'm probably gonna have to start another shell. But in the meantime, let's get this exploit. So let's look into the raw version of it. Select all. I could just simply wget it over here, but let's nano expl.c, Control Shift V, Control O, Enter, Control X. We have the exploit on Kali. Okay. And for some reason, this is gone. Okay, we might have to start another one. Okay, let's Control C over there, Control C over there, and CLVP 441, and rerun this command. No root to host. That's interesting. So there might be something wrong with my Kioptrix vulnerable machine, with my Kioptrix VirtualBox machine. Let's see if I can ping to google.com. I can. Let's see if I can nmap -sv. I cannot ping into the machine because I know that for some reason ping doesn't work on this machine. So 192.168.0.104. Host seems down. So let me try and fix this. Okay, so the machine seems to be running on 107 right now. So let's try the curl again. But this time we have to modify it and send this command to 0107. Okay, so we're back on the server. Let's just minimize that. Let's also minimize this one as well. Okay, so what we want to do, like I said, is to move this exploit expl.c into the machine through netcat. But first, let's get out of this. Let's try and see if we can get out with Python -c. So directly using Python pti.spawn bin tcsh, Python not found. Okay, so tcsh minus I, Python minus C, import pti, pti.spawn, then tcsh, okay, ls minus a. Let's go into temp. So we're going to try transferring expl.c into Kioptrix. So for that, we're going to listen minus, let's just do minus LP on port 448, and we're going to take the information in expl.c. I believe this is the right syntax, but we'll see. And on the Kioptrix machine, we do netcat to 192.168. Let's see if my Kali IP hasn't changed. So it's 0103, 192.168.0.103 on port 448. And whatever comes from that connection will go into, so whatever data comes from the connection will go to into expl.c 448. We then specify the minus v for verbosity, which is why we don't actually know if this executed properly. So I believe it did, but we'll see. So I'm actually going to control C over here. Okay, and then look over here. And as we can see, we have expl.c, but let's look into it. expl.c, and it seems to have been transferred correctly. Okay, so right now let's try and compile it with GCC. expl.c minus o expl. Okay, so it actually compiled without any errors, and we can see that we have the executable over here. But before I want to try this exploit, I want to actually show you that I am able to see into root ls minus al, but I cannot look into the congrats.txt or other files in here. So if I try catting congrats.txt, I'm getting a permission denied. Of course, because I am who am I, data. Let's get back into TMP and hope that this exploit is going to work. So expl and enter, and let's see, who am I? I'm root. Okay, let's go into root and cat congrats.txt, and that was it. So clear doesn't work because we don't have any term environmental variable. So let's try exporting term equals xterm echo term undefined variable. Let's try csh minus I. Try from over here, export term into xterm, command not found. What about from sh? Export term equals xterm echo term xterm. Let's go back into tcsh minus I. And what did I try doing over here? Oh yeah, clear. All right, it works. So this was Kioptrix 2014 in a nutshell. Like I said, I learned a lot from this, from exploiting this machine, from getting to the very top of the user's account on this machine, mostly because of the extensive enumeration that I've been doing on the server. So I learned a lot in terms of FreeBSD configuration, in terms of exploits, in terms of terminals, in terms of moving files between systems. So overall, this was a positive learning experience that I feel is going to help me further along the road. If you fellows enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone interested in cybersecurity penetration testing and offensive security. And with that said, I would like to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will be seeing you in the next one.